Let me ask you a question. What is the greatest question you've ever answered in this life? I bet you this, that the greatest question you're going to answer about life is about the life itself and your participation in it. In other words, your contribution into this world. If you ever answered that question from the get-go, the problem is that we come to the level where we have retired, been sent home after 65 years, being alive, you've been sent home with a clock. And that's when you start asking yourself questions related to your contribution in life. You're thinking that now I'm supposed to be a man and a woman of purpose now that I've retired. Late on, we're supposed to be asking these questions from the onset. And in the podcast, we've been discussing about being reflective and what we can garner from that mode of life. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
So from the get-go, let's just say this, that the quality of the lives we're going to live will be directly proportional to the quality of questions that we're going to aspire to answer, the quality of the questions we're going to seek to devote ourselves to answer in this life. The more we keep evading questions, the more we are living what I call a life of default. In other words, we're just living, following through the routines of life and the rut of life. And you've got to go to school, got to go to work, and you've got to pay bills and so on, and you just go through that. And at the end of the day, what is great inside of you keeps dying in there, because you've just steeped yourself into a life of routine. We call it a life of default. Just by default, what the tree does, what the fish in the sea does, what the birds in the air do. Nothing different. No questions asked. They don't ask any question. They don't analyze. They don't reflect. They don't think about how things could have been better. They don't innovate. They just put whatever it is that has been wired inside of them, hardwired inside of them. That's what they do. The lion roars because the roar has been put inside of it. The weaver bird weaves the nest because that's what has been put inside of it. The fish swims in the sea because that's what has been hardwired inside of them. It's a life of default. It's automatic. Not the human. The human is supposed to, of course, we have a degree of these automatic things. We have a degree, things about caring for one another. And that's the same thing that has been put inside of the other creatures. But the human is totally different. In that the human has been given an ability to think, to reflect, to analyze, to lead, to become a bigger, better version of themselves. That's why we're always having revolutions, industrial revolution, agrarian revolution, information age, and technological revolutions, and so on. Because that's what the human is. It can always become better. Let me tell you something. The things that we see today and we marvel at them, our kids, maybe our great-grandkids, are going to be laughing at us, thinking that, we had thought we had arrived. Because what is coming is going to be mind-boggling. And that's what the human is supposed to do. And I do believe that every time the human has a revolution, he is glorifying God. Every time the human becomes better, invents the helicopter, the flight, and so on, he is glorifying God. He is worshiping God. Worshipping God is not just about going to church and a mosque or a temple and lifting hands and so on and so forth and going through a religious rut. No, giving glory to God is going inside of what God has put and, honoring it and putting it to work and making sure that it's expanded and it becomes bigger and better and develops and grows. That's how you give glory to God, and that's what God intends for the human. But now I'm talking about the collective human. But let me go back, because where the rubber meets the road, I speak to individuals. Where the rubber meets the road is you as an individual. You will not develop, you won't have any revolution in your life unless you start asking life-defining questions, unless you start becoming reflective about your life. If you will not be reflective about your life, listen to me, you will not expend your full potential, and you, in other words, will not be satisfied. You will not be fulfilled, no matter how much you try to accumulate, no matter how much you try to achieve, no matter how much you try to outcompete people, no matter how much you try to do plastic surgery and change yourself and add some buttocks and add some boobs and whatever, add some beards and add some hair. You will not be fulfilled unless you start asking life-defining questions and you get answers for them. In the previous episode, we said that you are an answer waiting to happen. You are sent here because there is an answer for you. You are sent here because you are an answer and there is a question for you. That's why you are gifted the way you are gifted. That's why you behave the way you behave. That's why you have a disposition for some things and a disposition not for some things. That's why you're passionate about some and you're not passionate about others. It is because you are an answer sent to solve a particular question, and you need to find out what that is. And that's why we are saying that you need to start asking yourself questions and reflecting about your life to unearth these life important things. Do we ask ourselves hard questions enough? That's what I'm wondering as a human being. Do you ask yourself questions enough? Apart from where am I going to get money? Who is going to give me money? Who is going to marry me? Where am I going to get food? Food, shelter, clothing. Level of thinking. Do we ask ourselves questions that are deeper than that? And I've said in the previous episode, if we don't ask ourselves those questions, this question is normally asked us, especially when we accomplish something. The question is normally this: is that all there is to life? At times we just go through the motions of life, and the only time we stop the traffic to ponder about the questions of life is when we are forced to stop, when we're having a crisis, a setback, when our hearts are beating so hard, when we are heartbroken, when things are going haywire, helter-skelter, things are going south. It is during the times of a crisis that we start to ask these all-important questions. And I've always wondered, is there a way we can flip that coin and ask these questions, not because we have a crisis, but because we want to know the essence, the meaning, the reasons for our existence in life? And I believe this, that the greatest of us all is the one who does not wait for a crisis to come in order to be reflective. The greatest man you ever saw is the one who is reflective even before a crisis comes, reflective about his life, reflective about his contribution, his impact, his creativity, his reason for being on the face of the earth. That's the most influential person you'll ever see. Doesn't have to wait for a crisis to stop him in the tracks. And that's, by the way, every time you go through a crisis, could it be that it's just a reminder? Could it be that this crisis has just come to you so that you can reflect on the things that matter the most? What matters the most? That's one question that I'm going to discuss another time, but maybe I've discussed in these episodes already. The crisis comes to jolt us back to reality and to strip us of all things that don't matter, so we can ask the most important questions. Have you ever seen a man on their sickbed in pain? They don't ask about their Ferrari, and they don't ask about their land. They ask questions related to life and peace and meaning and relationships and their own contribution. That's what matters. See, we as a human generation, we have gone astray, we've gone haywire, we've gone so much on the selfish end of things. All we are looking for is, what can I get? What can I get? How can I win over that guy that I'm competing? How can I get this shortcut to get things easier for me? How much abundance can I have with little work that I can put in? And everyone is going towards that. If I wanted, by the way, to fleece you, it is very easy to fleece you. I will promise you all these things with minimal work. You think I'm lying? Have you ever been in a pyramid scheme? Or has your uncle or your father or your mother or anybody else ever been in a pyramid scheme? You know of someone, or maybe even yourself. You want a quick buck and no work. That's just about how humanity wants to live these days. So selfish, so self-centered. My right, my own expression, my pride, and so on. My. I'm the minority, you need to identify me. We don't stop to ask relevant, important questions that are going to cause us to become the better versions of ourselves, because we are an answer into this world. It is not just for a few guys like Martin Luther King Jr., like J.F. Kennedy or Neil Armstrong or any one of these visionaries. It is not just for T.D. Jakes to answer, or Zig Ziglar or Les Brown or Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Darren Hardy or John Maxwell. It is for every human being to realize that I am a solution. I am a solution. And you cannot realize that you are a solution if you are not reflective. You can live a life of default, or you can live a life of design. But where the life of design begins when we become serious thinkers, considering this life, considering the essence, the real reason as to why we are existing. I know some people have wished that they would have died. Some people would have wished that they would never have been born. I know, because I've been there. Because it comes because you realize that this life is absolutely meaningless. The things that you are getting, the life you are experiencing, meaningless. Why? Because you're not answering as you are an answer to this life. Because you're not existing to become a solution. You're existing to take, to accumulate. Take, accumulate. And it is the most fleeting of lives ever, never satisfying any human being out there. The high and the mighty, the low of the lowlies, the same old. That's why there is this breakaway from the Buckingham Palace. Prince William, is it Prince William? Breaking away, moving away, because the life of default doesn't fulfill nobody, even in the high palace. It doesn't. It is a life of design, lived in its uniqueness, live in its, Jesus Christ said that someone who is born again is like the wind. You don't know where it's flowing from, where it's coming and so on, but you feel it. That's how the human being is supposed to be. We're not supposed to be structured, mass produced like in an assembly line. No, we were not assembly line produced. We were uniquely, each and every one of us. That's why the human has unique fingerprints, unique voice prints, unique eye prints, unique heart set. Every single individual, even those guys who were identical twins, they are so different, so unique, you will be shocked in terms of their aspirations, in terms of them being an answer in this life that we've been given. So I want us to be as reflective as possible. And don't wait until a crisis knocks on your door, because a crisis is going to come and strip you to the bare minimum, so that the most important thing can be highlighted. So I'm inviting us to go ahead of the crisis. Maybe you'll be averting some crisis if you answered some of these questions. Maybe. So I'm inviting us to be as reflective enough and go ahead of this crisis and download answers to these questions of life before we can set off. Tomorrow we continue from there. But until then, think about these things. Bye-bye. A special shout out to my mentor Jeffrey Howard of Visionary Business University, found at mastermindmentor.com, who has graciously provided me with the soundtrack and the introductory track to this podcast. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.